Fantastic.
All right.
Hey, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads. Thank you for watching and listening and catching us wherever you're catching us. I'm Brian Altunian. I'm one of the co-hosts and one of the dads. With me, as always, my partner in Thrive, Mr. Shawn Francis, and behind the scenes in the control room, I like to make it seem like we're really in a studio. The control room is Sean Hall from Hawaii, managing our. Last week I said something like, "Hey, earlier when we were backstage, well, this platform that we use, right? It actually says, you're backstage until you are live."
Yeah, we have a virtual backstage, so we're not all together crazy. Partially, but not all together.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you doing?
Well, I'm excited for today's show. I'm good. I say this every week. Oh, I'm so excited about today's show. But that's because I really do love this platform that we have and the conversations that we bring up as my phone is now starting to blow up here for some reason. Our focus is on the area of supporting families with special needs issues. But we have found that these conversations transcend to families in other communities as well. So I'm excited about what we're going to be talking about today. It is Just Two Dads today, as we're ringing in 2021 and kick off New Year with a great subject that's near and dear to our hearts. And after a crazy year of the pandemic, I think a lot of folks are concerned about their money, their income, their sort out if they can go back to work, how they're going to work. And so today's conversation is going to be really fun. So looking forward to that. And wearing, for those who can see us on screen, wearing my royalty color of purple, and Sean is wearing a sort of a interesting color of green. So let's just go with that. So just for this, if you can't see us and you can just visualize, I'm in purple and Sean is in some form of green, and we're going to be talking about money and income. And yes, thank you. And I'll say, just for everybody who signs on and watches us live, we love you. We're blessed. We're honored to be able to do this and have this conversation with you all and get feedback and input. And your friend, Robert Moorhead, who's become my friend, and has welcomed me into the family down at in the Virgin Islands. For those who are new to this podcast, we are now airing on every Monday afternoon on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and a lot of that is thanks to Robert Moorhead's support of our show and to others. So I just want to say thank you again. We're excited to be doing this, and we have a lineup of people who are going to be on this show with us over the next several weeks and months that are just going to be phenomenal folks. So before we get into today's topic, I just want to say hello, Sean. I love you, buddy. I'm so glad to be doing this journey with you. And man, my life has changed since that first day I met you, now almost 6 years ago, and in ways that I never thought was possible. So honored to be doing this with you.
Same here. Thank you so very much. And we never know what fate has in store for us. And sometimes we think that the great responses and effects of our destiny and crossing paths with people will happen right away. One thing, time goes by so very fast, and I have to apologize in advance. I'm going to be a little all over the place, which says a lot because I usually am anyway. But it seems like lately there's so many departures from this planet that are taking place, not all related to COVID, but especially in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, just left and right. People that are famous, people that are loved ones, just a lot. And it reminds me and takes me back to what we do and the winding down of the year and the beginning of a new as well, which is our time on this planet and just making sure that we do everything we can to contribute to the time and space of other people, which allows us to jump right into today's topic, which is special needs and income. And you and I talked about this, and we have over time, and we have to face several facts. 2020 has changed so many things, and it's interesting the way we get used to things very quickly. we're more capable of adapting to change than we might realize. At the same time, we're resistant to it. And here's how 2020 is an example of that. In the last year, we've gotten used to things that now seem very normal, that less people complain about, that 12 months ago would seem insane. And when you really stop and think about the stuff that we're used to, like, we exchange gifts with family members that don't live under our roof, and we did like a drug deal drop off like you would in a movie. And I was in the middle of it with a mask on going, now you see how weird this is? So among the other things that it's changed is the way that we, not so much the way we spend money. It's just changed because we were spending money electronically, versus cash for quite some time, but now twice as much.
Yeah.
Drivers for Amazon are probably 50 times more busy. So not so much the way in which we spend it, but how much. But what has definitely changed is the manner in which we earn it. If those of us that still do are fortunate enough to do so. And because, going back to my earlier statement about being resistant to change, some people and some companies have not been able to adapt, and as a result, people have lost income, jobs have been laid off, people have been laid off, industries have been affected. But then there's some people that have been able to pivot. And when you are raising a child or have a loved one with special needs, again, we talked about the needs not being special. Everyone has the same needs, but the definition of special needs by catastrophic injury, diagnosis, delay in development, whatever the case might be, the needs aren't necessarily special. The quantity of those needs is what becomes special. So as a result, some of us have gotten very resourceful in terms of how we provide services and are able to turn that into income. Other people, depending upon their mindset, their experience, or the severity of a diagnosis or injury that a loved one has, are having a hard time doing that. And we're not here to judge anybody. For some of us, we just need to turn our focus just a little bit, have a little bit of a paradigm shift, and realize that we are in a position to make this a great opportunity for ourselves. For other people, there are real challenges to face. But either way, it's a very interesting time. And those are the things that we're going to talk about here today.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great topic. And, it's funny. You're right. There's a difference in the way that we look at the world. I used to make a joke about it. Before, if you saw a bunch of folks, starting to put masks on before going into a bank, you would think, uh-oh, something bad is going to go down, And now if you see a group of people walk in without a mask, you think, oh no, something bad is going to go down, right? Because if you're not wearing a mask, you're in a public place, all of a sudden, you're next thing you know, you're a viral sensation on social media because you're getting hounded about wearing a mask. But it's now become the thing. And so as we adjust to this this new way of being, and this new, really it's created an awareness on a number of things. Mm-hmm. It's interesting how certain industries have been able to make the adjustment while others haven't. I'm amazed to see how some companies were in the I know one company in particular that was doing CBD products and then turned into a hand sanitizer manufacturer.
Right.
All of these car manufacturers who have become now delivery van manufacturers. And, to your point, if you can pivot, great. And it really just requires a shift in mindset and opening up, like thinking a little outside the box and opening up the thought process. For individuals who have been relying on a 9-to-5 job, or relying on work as we've defined it in the past, that thinking outside the box is required as well, right? We've got to have people have to be able to make adjustments, or they're, this is an opportunity to take full charge ahead, or in a way be a little bit left behind, right? We generally call this separation season in our business, right? The difference between folks who make a holiday a hollow month and those who just know that they've got to get at it because they've got a family to support and they've got to bring home the bacon. So for us in the business that we're in, I think we have seen an explosion of opportunity. So let's talk about that a little bit too, and only because we've been doing Zoom and distance communication about the kinds of things that we do in our company for a long time. We kind of look at this pandemic opportunity as the rest of the world catching up to what we do, and we've been able to make adjustments on the fly. And it goes to the first thing that you had mentioned, which was we've had a lot of folks who've gotten sick, and for certain strains of this virus, that sickness is, while it may initially go away, it's going to have a long haul effect. In some cases, I get surprised when I see how folks of a young age are passing away from complications due to COVID. There's a congressman in Missouri who's 41 years old who got elected on, being sworn in for the new Congress and passed away from complications of COVID. 41 years old, and it's crazy. Wow. So, our perspective in our business is to look at how do we take care of families. How do we make sure that families are taken care of? Things like life insurance and long-term care insurance, disability insurance for those who are stricken. Life insurance, obviously, for protection of the family, but other things, getting out of debt and handling financial matters. I think that's an area where everybody could use some help and some support. And I think the pandemic has shown that not enough people in our country and, in the surrounding areas save enough money. Right? They don't have an emergency fund set aside. We'll talk about that. That's a pandemic, in my opinion. That's a challenge, right? People don't save enough money for emergencies. That's why the pandemic was so painful for so many people. They didn't have enough money set aside. Right.
Most definitely. And for those that, may be curious, let's talk about we'll talk about several industries, several opportunities, and needs that everyone has, and maybe needs that special needs families have in particular, and where people that are raising a child with special needs or caring for a loved one with special needs might be able to take advantage of an opportunity being of service to others. So the first thing we'll talk about is what we do and what we know. If anyone is familiar with how the financial services industry works, it generally works to, I was going to say cater to, but the more accurate term is probably fight over the need to serve the wealthy. And in those cases, the way the industry generally works, service is a loosely used term anyway, because you have an environment where one is usually captive, meaning they represent the company that they work for. They have products from that company only. They charge a quota. They usually won't sit down with anyone that doesn't have at least $250,000 liquid, in some cases, maybe even more. And then at that point, an agent or advisor sits down with a business owner or family, and at some point they realize that those people need a size 8 shoe, financially speaking, but what they have is a 5. And with the quota to meet, even if they have the highest level of character and integrity, they're faced with a difficult question. Do I look out for the family sitting in front of me or the one that I have at home so that I can keep my job and put food on the table? And the way that we operate removes those questions, because we're not captive. We have access to hundreds of different providers, each who know that they're not the only game in town. So we're able to help people, families, individuals, and huge corporations. So anyone from the ultra wealthy, middle class to below that, with things like life insurance, the right type and the right amount, retirement, investments, debt elimination, different areas of debt, whether we're talking about credit card debt, student loans, or tax debt, and then estate planning as well. All at one place where there isn't a quota to meet, and what you're doing is putting people before profits, therefore the profits take care of themselves. So as we speak to that, and we host the events that that we do, providing those things for people, and the other area, of course, where we help people is providing an opportunity to learn how to provide other people with that. So we teach people to fish, but also put them in a position to help other people do the same thing. And so there's the greatest need for all of those things right now. People are concerned about their own mortality. They're concerned about their job security, whether or not that exists. So we have found ourselves in the middle of growth that is up at the minimum of 50%, and that's being very conservative, and we're not able to keep up with that need. That being said, not everyone has been that blessed. And as you mentioned, a year at least before COVID hit, we were doing some of our events and some of our appointments with clients via Zoom. And so it was a very easy transition to begin to do that on a full-time basis. And it's easy to take that for granted, um, and not have a balance between being having empathy for other people's position, and at the same time just trying to shed light on what it is that they may need. And at the same time, we've had some people on, which we will again as individuals as well as a panel of people that are started businesses for themselves even prior to the pandemic, providing services in the area of education, law, and various areas that families need.
Yeah, I think. Listen, and for anybody who's listening to us for the first time or catching our show for the first time, we made it a specific condition of what we do to not outwardly pitch our services. So please don't take it that way. We just, as an example of one of the services that we provide to our special needs families, we want to make sure that the conversation around money and finance and income is talked about, because it's a subject that's generally fairly taboo. People don't openly talk about money. They don't, unless they're showing off, or they're trying to impress somebody. Discussion around money is often a difficult conversation for folks to have. And the stress and the pressure of day-to-day activities and, often prevent people from being honest and true with themselves and even their families and friends with what the financial situation is. Our goal, our focus is to educate people on just ways that money work, the ways that money works. No, the ways that is that. Now I'm catching myself, right? The ways that
in which money works.
The way money works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, a couple things. So there's some fascinating bits of information around money, just in general, that I think people should know. Like, the amount of debt in the United States is so significant. And, one of the things that's been discussed in government now is, the debt, and it's out of control, and the deficit, and people don't know the difference between the debt and the deficit. All of these things, it seems like we've printing money for the stimulus packages that are often, fought over, and where does that money come from? And, generally it comes from taxes. But one of those things that I if it's a cool to share is, when I think about how much we have in this country, there's $1.6 trillion in student loan debt and 1.3 or 1.4 trillion in credit card debt. And I often ask people when I'm having the conversation if they really realize how much $1 trillion is. And it's kind of a concept. So I always tell people, like, think about it. Like, if you could, if you had an unlimited, paycheck, or I'm sorry, bank account, and you could spend $1 million a day, how long do you think you could comfortably spend $1 million or easily spend $1 million a day? And it's funny to hear. It depends on people's ages, right? Young folks are like, oh, I can spend $1 million a day for the next, 50 years. Older folks were like, I can spend it for a little bit and then maybe give it away to charity. But it'd be a hard time to spend $1 million a day. And then I generally ask people, how long would it take you, do you think, to spend $1 million a day to get to $1 trillion? And you know the answer to that question, right, Shawn? We've talked about this before. It's right. I'll answer it though. It's 2,740 years, spending $1 million a day to get to $1 trillion. It would take an individual 2,740 years to get to $1 trillion. And we have 1.6 trillion in student loan debt and 1.3 or 1.4 trillion in credit card debt. And that's not the scary number. That is scary as it is, right? That's insane if you think about that. But the real chill for folks to understand that our tax rules in the United States and surrounding territories are going to change significantly in the coming years, because at the moment there's $123 trillion in unfunded obligations in the United States, meaning those are obligations that have been promised to people who are alive and are expecting that money, and we don't have the funds for them. That's in the form of Social Security, Medicare, military benefits and pensions, and those types of things where we don't have the money for it today to pay those obligations. So
Right.
how does the government raise their money, right? They have to raise taxes. They have to, and by the way, this outgoing administration, just reduced taxes for, on the wealthy, and there's a lot of discussion about that. It's on whose back is the unfunded obligation tax, impact going to be felt? It's going to be felt on the average American family who has a typical 9-to-5 job, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so as we think about that and going back to work in the new pandemic, post-pandemic world, and do you want to go back to work in an office that may or may not have protections for you as an employee or for your customers? Do you want to go back to a job where you're answering, fulfilling somebody else's dream or answering to somebody else, and bear the burden of that tax hit on your paycheck? Or do you want to look at other ways of earning an income? And there are so many people who have made that pivot, who have made the shift, who have looked at creating additional streams of revenue. And to your point, Shawn, things like, lawyers and, and obviously the service providers that exist have made a shift. There's always going to be manufacturing and products, but services is really an area where, people can step in and forge a new path for themselves and work for themselves. Isn't it different? Don't you? I mean, I'm just going to ask you, don't you think it's different if you were working 40 or 50 hours in your own business versus 40 to 50 hours working for somebody else? The whole thing is different, right?
It's completely different. It's a different mindset. And that's where we talk about, you were mentioning dreams earlier. That's where the whole thing intersects and ties in, because I've heard it said that Mark Cuban, the famous billionaire shark on Shark Tank, I almost had a Freudian slip. I almost said fellow shark. I have no idea why. And I don't have a desire to be on that show. but I think you're talking about people that I think that, that's people. Those are people that are looking to utilize commerce, service, and goods to make the world a better place. So maybe that's the commonality. I don't know. But at any rate, he's known as that. Owner of the Dallas Mavericks, the NBA team, and supposedly he said that he would rather work 50 hours a week for himself at an annual income of $50,000 a year than as opposed to working for someone else, regardless of the hours, for $1 million a year. And so there really is something different to that, because the other thing that happens as one who's caring for someone with special needs is your dreams. The great Langston Hughes has a legendary poem called A Dream Deferred. And, what's as important as a dream being deferred is the reason why. Sometimes there are very noble reasons for that. I now put my aspirations on hold because my child or whoever might be needs me first and foremost. I have to stand guard and I need to take care of that responsibility. I have to do that. That is huge. And what can get lost along the way if someone has been doing that for so long is any sliver of hope, even the slightest bit that they may be able to, incorporate the two, meaning that if there's an opportunity where you have a dream or a goal that can be tied into the service that you provide and allows you to make sure that there is some semblance of stability for that loved one when you depart, there's a measurable value in that. And, our business provides that quite naturally. Our income and business ownership opportunity does as well. But for some people, like this, people we know that, are utilizing skills and talents on a daily basis, specifically for their loved one. And they may be able to take those things and turn them into to income, whether you're looking at something that fits the definition of a quote unquote side gig or a full on business. You and I were talking about the fact that, and my CPA, I was telling you that he posted on social media that the number of, and correct me on the term because I'm going to butcher it completely, what you apply for in order to get a business number with the IRS. What is that?
Yeah, an EIN number, an employee identification
employee identification number. Yes. So the number of applications for those that the IRS has seen over the last year has gone up considerably. You and I talked about that. You did a training for our associates on that. But then again, I happen to see my own CPA just post on his own personal social media page that he has personally received twice as many of them as usual. What that means is there's a lot of people out there who are stepping outside the box and reinventing themselves, and it's crucial to do that now because we are not going back to the normal that we were before. I don't care if they get a stranglehold on COVID-19 tomorrow and it goes away.
Yeah.
What has taken place is that industries and businesses have found ways to make more money on less overhead, having employees at home as well as people doing that for themselves. So as many of us as possible need to get in on the game and make sure that we're part of that change that's coming in 2021.
For sure. I think that if you want to boil it down to some really a very simplistic perspective, the government in the United States through its tax code encourages certain performance. So for those that are anti, this is the thing like, oh my gosh, Animal Farm and all of that, conspiracy theories and whatnot. But think about this. I know they're going crazy right now, but think about this. When you get a tax deduction, you get a tax deduction when you get married. When you get a tax deduction when you have children. You get a tax deduction when you buy a house. So those are three things that the government wants you to do, encourages you to do through the tax code by giving you a tax break for doing those three things. The fourth thing is owning your own business. If you're an independent contractor and you own your own business, that's another thing where you have an opportunity to write off a lot of taxes. Number 5 is a charity, right? Give to community, give back, develop a 501c3 organization, a nonprofit that contributes. So, the reality is that the government tells you, encourages people to take certain action. Isn't that interesting? Because the government doesn't really say to you, go get a job, and yet all of our other institutions seem to kind of gear us up to, become good workers, in the workforce. And we need folks to obviously to have certain jobs. We rely on people working in certain jobs. But the reality is, for those who want to make a change in this new year and looking at the post-pandemic world, the idea of having your own business or starting your own business. We've had guests on the show from Georgiana, who's the special needs attorney, who is an advocate for people in the special needs. Junko Kelman, I'm sorry, I didn't say her last name, who is an attorney and has built a practice around helping special needs. Layla Luna, who we had on early on in our podcast, who developed a foundation to help businesses create an awareness for their employees to serve the special needs community and have a special branding around serving the special needs community. We've had obviously Susanna, who's really become a partner in our venture here, our village, who has built a business around being a life coach for special needs families. And so there's a lot of things that the people that we have brought onto the show that we engage with in our village that have chosen those paths to create their own revenue stream, in some cases an additional revenue stream, an income stream that allows them to both serve their community of clients, but also serve their own families as a caretaker for a child with special needs children, and being able to have that flexibility and freedom. And as I'm seeing the comment, Robert saying, yeah, business ownership gives more freedom. Right, we're not teaching that kind of independence. It's true. We are not and haven't been, and I'm a product of that. I grew up in corporate America, but that was, by the way, after leaving my parents' businesses. My dad owned a grocery store, and my mom was in real estate, and I was in both of those businesses. Business owner and entrepreneur, and yet I wanted to see the other side, and I jumped into corporate America. And there's no such thing as job security in corporate America, folks, no matter what level you're at. So I've chosen this path, and it's not an easy path. An entrepreneur, somebody who ventures out on their own, as we talked about, it's not an easy path, but it's so rewarding in so many ways that a job can never offer, such as in the area of fulfillment. You and I talk about that all the time. And I
And
know
I like to say,
we're long-winded. You guys know that. We sometimes, Sean and I are talking, we want to talk, we both want to say something good, but, so I apologize. I monopolized the
no,
conversation there, but
no, that's okay. That's okay.
go ahead.
But sometimes we talk about, um, now the word that I was actually going to say
Fulfillment?
has we're talking about fulfillment. Yeah, but what I was going to say specifically, literally packed bags, made a reservation, and jumped on my head and went on vacation. I don't know what I was going to say. We were talking about it. It was related to what you were saying. We were talking about that fulfillment, but with what you were saying earlier, there not being any security. You know, the further up the ladder you go, the greater chance that may maybe let go in tough times, because it costs the company the most to pay you because you're demanding the greatest salary, and
I would love to. I
it's
would
very
love to say
interesting.
that's. I would love to say that's true. Unfortunately, the reality though is the crazy thing is in all the corporations that I worked for, where layoffs were a thing, it was never the guys at the top that got laid off. It was always the folks at the bottom doing all the work. And so you'd have a sales force or you'd have a workforce, and then they would cut the workforce in half, and the half that was remaining then had to do double the work for the same salary. Right? That was their answer to lopping off big chunks. In my opinion, if you laid off 10% of the executives, you've covered your your deficit in your company, and you've got workers
Right.
that can get the job done, as opposed to managers. But no, you would think that the guys at the top. The reality though is if it's a board controlled company, executives never really have job security anyways. It is true because their performance is judged, and the board has a fiduciary responsibility to the stakeholders. And so if the executives aren't performing as the board has promised to the shareholders or the stakeholders, they replace the guys at the top with somebody else. It's really just a widget. They don't reduce the salary. They don't they don't get any savings in any of that. But those decisions, and that was one of the things that I found so disillusioning about corporate America, because I was never the guy at the top making the decisions. I was the guy in the middle management role that had to actually execute on the plans, and literally execute. Like I had to literally lay people off and shut down divisions, and I would shake my head. I was like, I remember when I was at one company in the entertainment industry. We had a massive layoff just after signing a 10-year lease on a 3-story building, which we occupied all 3 floors. And we had laid everybody off like within the first year. And I thought that was such, how do you not have that kind of foresight or forethought to know that
Right.
that thing may be coming before signing a 10-year lease on a building? It's crazy.
Right.
Crazy decision
Wow.
making.
Yeah, that's crazy. But it's interesting. And again, we're all the sum total of our experience. And I think it was so powerful for you to talk about, growing up in a family business and going out and doing your own thing. Well, that was very much my experience. My grandfather came from Cuba as a very young child and came to the U.S. Virgin Islands, came to St. Thomas, was orphaned, met my grandmother. At some point, she was orphaned as well. And they were the living embodiment of the skit on In Living Color. When you would have the kid that had like one job, and the father's response is, "What kind of work do you do?" And he would tell him what he did, and he'd have a job. He's like, "What? That's one thing. When I was your age, I was the cook, the dishwasher," so on and so forth. And when I saw those skits, living in Minneapolis at the time, I rolled, and I know that the Waynes that produced and created the show and starred on it grew up on the East Coast. They're from New York, and so they probably came across a lot of people from the Caribbean. But that was my experience completely. And
That's funny.
But it's funny, even though my grandparents, not only did they not make it to not finish high school, they never made it to high school. But my grandfather had started the local transit on St. Thomas, which was huge, as well as school busing and stuff like that. And the company was named after his first name. His name was Manasseh Francis, which is a name out of the Bible, which I had never heard of before, seen in much other places. And so, despite the fact
did you see that
they
Robert
did
posted that before you said that word?
No, I did not. But
Before you
like-minded.
posted that word, Robert just posted Manassa bus line. That's hilarious.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that is
That's
awesome.
right.
You guys are so
And
into
so they
it.
had that.
Sorry, keep going.
They had a pool. They had a pool hall. He had a Chrysler dealership. All these things, and he was the epitome of a self-made man. The home where my dad lives on St. Thomas today, the road that leads up to where he lives and everything, there was no road leading there. So my grandfather completely had vision to blast the road leading up to, you know, where they built their home on the whole 9 yards, and everything was based on giving back to the community. How many people can we empower? Now, because when my father went to college and then came back home to the Virgin Islands, we're talking about the 1960s, the thought process still then, and I don't know if it was because they worked so hard to the bone or what, was that you go to school, you get a good education, and that you get your 4-year degree. Now you're going to come back and maybe work in the family business, or you're going to become a doctor, lawyer, or something of prominence. That's what I grew up around. In the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now that process has completely changed because everything is like, so where'd you go to school? What are you studying? And now the world has shifted a little bit. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit. It shifted drastically, and I've had to adjust completely. And for the better, because I used to think something was wrong because I hadn't done the 4 years that everybody else around me did, which was bare minimum. But now we're in the age of, not just the quote unquote business owner where you're building something that's, Fortune 500 or even a small business owner, but even the independent contractor. So there's people we know that are just by their nature, mama bears and papa bears and caregivers. You go through a diagnosis that a child has or a loved one or a catastrophic injury, they're now in a wheelchair, they're, got some kind of limitation, and you're providing for them. You know what it's like to an extent for someone who's new to that experience or that diagnosis. What about the idea of you providing education, service, and preparation for people in that situation? People that have what is referred to as an IEP, an individualized education plan. When a person goes into those things, your child is diagnosed, and they say, okay, now you're in school, we're going to put you on an IEP. And what that means is they do a big study, and they study what the child's capabilities are. They put them in special education, and then they simply present you with that, and may or may not tell you that you don't have to necessarily sign it. And it can be very daunting and intimidating in a room full of administrators and teachers and things of that sort, and you don't necessarily know what to do. There's value that one can provide in preparing people for an IEP. There's value that people can provide in helping people with other services, whether it's therapy or things like that. Now there's certification involved in there, but the bottom line is that there's a difference and a dollar to be made for people that are members of the special needs community that will allow them to change the normal that we go back to as this year, this new year and beyond begins to take place. And there's far more power in questions than there are statements, especially if the statement is, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And there's power in more power in questions than there are in statements. And how you ask the question has everything to do with it. Because if you throw your hands up and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? There's not much power in that question. But if you put your hand on your chin and use some vision and just think for a second and then go, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? That's completely different. And I swear, if you do that, and I know I'm saying this coming from a place where other people have greater challenges than we do, meaning, as a family, with regard to our son Elijah and the challenges right now we're going through the sleep deprivation because of less melatonin produced by boys, and now we're on, and you're on winter break and all that kind of stuff. And I know that if that's our greatest problem, that's small compared to other people. But I am saying that approach is why we are sitting here today, why we do what we do, and why this answer happened to fall into our laps. So for other people, regardless of what their situation is, I think there's something there to be found if you ask that question in the right way at the very least. And our hope is that, today, with today's show and going forward, that we can just shed some ounce of light and a bit of hope when people end up asking that question.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I think that's what's happening now more than anything. What this pandemic has created is opportunity for people to ask insightful questions and ask questions about what the future is going to look like. I know Robert posted the question about special needs children having an IEP. Yeah, those individualized plans are established by the school district, and there's provision for the teachers and the counselors and advocates to get together and put a plan together for a child with special needs to make sure that the school is servicing those needs. And if the school can't service it, they make a recommendation for outside private resources to service the needs, to provide the child with the most effective support in education. The neurotypical child doesn't get an individualized education plan. Although they could, it just isn't called that, right? They could go to a counselor and say, "Hey, this is my path. This is what I'd like to do, and how can you help me design the education stream to get there?" But we've got an answer there, so hopefully that answers that question.
It's a separate note because we're talking about business today. But I shouldn't say it's not a separate note. It's all connected. We're talking about prosperity and spiritual fulfillment. But the one thing that people should know also is that you don't have to sign the IEP right there on the spot. You can take it home, review it, look at it, and then sign it after the fact, provided that you're comfortable. And if you're not, you can have it amended and say, I don't agree with this here. We should have this in place, this accommodation. I don't think that is necessary. And it can be amended at that point in time. And then the other thing to know is that even once it is signed and then returned to the district, it can be amended after the fact as well. It can be amended at any time. Now that's here in the state of California. I don't know how that differs elsewhere, but again, more power in a question than a statement, and it's one that one should ask if they're not sure.
Yeah, it's pretty close to the same in other states, and the reason why it goes back to the district is that the district provides the financial resources to pay the supporting teachers, aides, resources to provide the service if they can't be accommodated within the school as it is. And so again, it really, at the end of the day, it all comes down to money. But here's the thing: to have an effective IEP, you have to either know what you're doing. To all those points that you just made, if you're going to have an amendment, what can you ask for? How do you make an amendment? How do you adhere to this? How do you make sure you get the things that you want? You either have to know, which means you have to do a ton of research, or you get an advocate who can provide the support for you. And that's where, again, some of the folks that we have talked to have been in the conversation. There are special needs advocates that know how the IEP system works and know how to fight for you. So the point is, this while we're talking about special needs IEPs, individualized education plans, it's exactly in line with what we're talking about as far as establishing a career path or a way to figure out what money is. Because either you can seek out those things that are of interest to you, and maybe you want to find a way to earn income or build your own business, or you bring a specialist or somebody who's got some expertise in that area to guide you and give you options. The point you made about questions where people are like, oh, what am I going to do, or being insightful in the thought process, what am I going to do? It's almost like when you ask the question of what am I going to do, it's as if it's an endless, helpless, morass of options. Whereas if you can be insightful and go, what am I going to do? It almost becomes what option am I going to choose, right? What am I going to do? Asked in a specific way is, of the 3 or 4 paths I can go, which one am I going to choose? As opposed to somebody who sits helpless on the couch and looks up at the sky and says, what do I do now, right? There's a different way of approaching that. And so, I know the work that we do, and more importantly, the work that we do with partner individuals and companies that we work with, they're there to provide options. And we are not pitchmen. We're not salesmen. We are people who provide education so that folks can make educated decisions about the paths that they're on, so that they can narrow that broad scope of possibility into a tangible and attainable selection of a few things, all of which would make great sense, and let the individual make that decision for themselves and choose which way they want to go, all of which are going to help them serve their needs. which goes back to the other thing I think that you were talking about before, which goes back to the idea of goals and dreams, right? And reestablishing goals and dreams and figuring out where we are as, and by the way, as men, we have this I don't know how many men sit around and actively want to do like a vision board at the end of the year, right? As they plan their, men are like, no, we put a business plan together, and we think that it's a gender specific task to put together a vision board with pictures and visuals. But the reality is it's all the same, right? To some degree, if you set a plan in place of what you want to accomplish and you can put the image in front of you, it's almost as if the image calls you into action and calls you forth.
Right.
The idea of dreaming, right? It's all about what's the world calling you to step up into and, to take control. Some people have some specific strengths, areas in their lives that they're very good at certain things. I remember going to, now sorry to divert here a second, but I remember going to a graduation at UC Berkeley. Oh my God. I'm going to say how long ago. It was a long time ago. Robert made a comment about me not looking very gray. That's just because my hair seems to be a little bit wet today. But I will tell you, I'm old. But I remember going to a graduation at UC Berkeley for my former brother-in-law, and Tom Peters was the keynote speaker. And it was so impressionable on me. Tom Peters wrote the book In Search of Excellence, among many other books. Tom Peters did a lot of surveys of businesses and what make businesses. And in fact, he wrote a book called, gosh, I can't remember, screw up the title, but What Made a Business Great, right? Not a good business, but what makes a good business great. Actually, Excellence, In Search of Excellence was all about that. But I'll never forget Tom Peters in his keynote speech to the graduates at UC Berkeley. The comment that stuck out to me was he said, listen, if you're going to make a decision about the path that you're going to take, your career path, you want to highlight those strengths that you have. Like if you don't like people, don't go into management. It kind of boils it down very simple, right? If you love numbers, right, you're going to find a career path, where you're spending time away from your family, or you're focused on, on an end game. Do it in an area that you have an affinity to, or you have a desire to accomplish, and something that's going to light you up, because you're spending so much time doing that. And I remember taking that, and I used to mentor young college students as they were looking at where they were going. And I used to say, I may have mentioned this once before, but if you could put on a pair of glasses, with the filter of how you want to see the world, how you want to step into the world, utilizing your strengths, then you want to look at the world from that perspective. If you love sports, you don't have to be an athlete. You could work for a sports organization, or a sports apparel company, or a sports shoe manufacturer, or a sports agency, right? Be an agent for, there's so many things. If you're a sports fanatic, there are so many things that you can move into if you want to have that job. If you want to be somebody who takes the position where I want to be, being a sports agent, an individual, sports agent is an awesome path. I know people who love the entertainment industry and want to become entertainment attorneys. And that was the thing that they did, and stepped out on their own and have become amazing attorneys, building a practice around the area that they love. Because if you're going to spend the time to do it, to the point that Mark Cuban talked about, you want to spend your time in the area that you're passionate about, and much rather spend 50 hours a week for yourself, making a lot less money than working for somebody else and making their dreams come true.
Definitely. And it's interesting, Robert posted a question earlier where he said, who has the better job, the guy making $250,000 or the guy signing the check? Well, everything is relative, just like, people will say, oh, so-and-so's rich. Okay, compared to what? Perspective is everything, and perspective is truth. So to the guy that's making $500,000, the guy that's making $1 million is rich. To the guy that's making 500,000, he's seen as rich by the guy that's making 250. And so the answer to that question, at least from my perspective, is who's got the better job? It depends on how you define the better job. For me personally, if the guy that's signing the check is providing a greater level of contribution to society, to the people that work for him, and they're empowered, right? And he's adding the level of service he's providing to his family as well, then he may have the better job, especially if whatever he provides allows the guy that's making 250 to go get more through service and through giving, should he aspire to do that. If that's not the case, then I don't know that he's making that he's got the better job. If the guy that's making 250 is, has expenses that are considerably below that and has some control over his time when he's with his family, it's predictable and it doesn't affect their quality of life, he may have the best job in the world if that's the case, especially if he doesn't desire more. So perspective is everything. And I think that one of the things that we're not clear on always is, what is it that we really want anyway? And that's something that's equally important too. So the answer to that would dictate the answer to that question.
Yeah, listen, my feeling about it is, having been, I've been the guy that's written the check, and I've been the guy that's received, the big check. At the end of the day, I still think that, he who has the money wins. Because if you're making $250,000 a year and somebody else is signing your paycheck, at the end of the day, you're expected to, be available to earn that $250,000, right? I know that when I was, working at the executive level within a corporation, there was no such thing as free time or my weekends or my evenings. My phone was on 24/7. I was available all the time. That was the expectation. Yeah. So I worked for the guy who had the money, and the guy who had the money dictated my life, right? And so
your thought is then there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it, which I see. Provided that he's got some control over his own time, the guy that's writing the check is the one that's winning.
Yeah, because that guy dictates. And by the way, I worked for I had a job in the entertainment industry with a narcissistic CEO. I realize how redundant that is. And narcissistic CEO, I think any CEO has some level of narcissism. And by the way, I was a CEO, and so I'm copying to that. There's some level of narcissism that comes with that. But this CEO that I worked for, there was no reasoning with that person, because at the end of the day, he holds up the pen and is like, I write the checks, it's my call, I make the decision. And by the way, I've worked for several guys like that in the entertainment industry, and no amount of money is worth it working, no matter how big the paycheck is, no amount of money is working when that's your day-to-day existence. And by the way, I'm not saying that I was always right in things that I used to recommend or the things that I used to, but when I was CFO, and I could clearly, objectively look at a situation and say, look, this is the issue and this is a solution. Mm-hmm. And the answer was met with, the response was, well, I don't care. I'm doing it my way. I left that job. I've clearly remember the day I left that job because there was no self-determination in that job. You could have hired you could have hired a robot. Or you could have hired a stack of boxes to do the job if they weren't going to listen to the input. So, at the end of the day, in my opinion, having that kind of a job is not. I would never trade working for myself again to go back into any kind of situation where I was working for somebody else and by the way, that position is met with a lot of scoff and negativity from family and friends who are like, come on, man, you're smart, you have an MBA, you just go get a good job and make a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. But that's not, I'm 57 years old, you guys. It's not about that.
So tell me this, about
that anymore,
because right? our perspectives as indoctrination into the special needs community by way of diagnosis is different, because your daughter, Joe, is now 25. Elijah is 14. At the time that Elijah was diagnosed, my foray into financial services it's pretty much tied to him. Like, it just so happened to work out at the same time. And in the beginning, when you get into, start any business, whether it's utilizing a platform or completely from scratch where you invest all the money and everything, you're working a lot and making a little or nothing. And if it's done right over time, you will eventually earn a lot and you're working less. And so it was most definitely the former, not the latter, for me at a time where he was receiving, I would take him to therapy in the morning after taking my stepdaughters to school. and I take him to therapy in the morning, and then we did I was the only dad in a mommy and me class, and then he had therapy, an ABA and feeding therapy and stuff like that at home, 6 days a week, and things were like super tight, but I had the freedom to do those things as my wife worked the typical 9 to 5 hours, and so I'm not saying that there wasn't a struggle, because there was, but that was a little different. And then of course, as the years go by, we then became legal guardians to and adopted my sister-in-law's 4 kids, and through all of that, you're still talking about flexibility in terms of time to deal with some of those struggles. In your case, when Jordan's diagnosis came about, you were in the throes of the corporate world. How did you navigate that stuff in terms of therapies and appointments and everything like that? Because while you were doing that, your wife at the time was an attorney, but did she have a practice, or was she working at a firm as an employee?
Yeah, she was at a firm, certain law firms allow you to, as an attorney, they allow you to bring in clients and get paid, a little bit more on top of your salary. So there's a little bit of entrepreneurial work there. But I was actually, when Jordan was diagnosed, I had started I had left. I worked for that large corporation in the entertainment industry. I don't want to say who it is, but it
who shall remain nameless.
Schmime Corner.
Schmime Corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I almost said Time Warner. That would be wrong. But I had left. That was, I had left. So here's the crazy thing about that. And I know we're getting to the end of the show. I'll just wrap this up very quickly. I was hired in May or June of 1995, and was charged with doing some consolidation and of divisions at the time, and ended up by October of that year putting a layoff for everybody in my division. I was the guy laying off people in my division. I didn't even know that. They'd hired me less than 6 months earlier, and my wife at the time, my wife and I just bought a house, and she was pregnant, and Jordan was born in November of that year. So I was last man standing, and eventually, let go as well. So I was in between gigs in the early days, or in between jobs, I would say, in the early days of Jordan's early process, and her diagnosis was, I was an independent contractor, so I had some flexibility. So I was doing a lot of stuff with her in therapies and whatnot. But her mom was a major advocate. I don't know if I answered your question, but I had that flexibility. For special needs families, it's difficult when you have a full-time gig and you're working for somebody else, and you have to be there and be available for therapies and the things that you're talking about. It's nearly impossible to do. You almost have to have two, working partners, one who's working a full-time job and one that's got a flexible schedule, in order to be available. Otherwise, it's nearly impossible. And that's why what we were talking about today is so important for people who are dealing with special needs challenges. And by the way, even if you're not dealing with a special needs challenge, but especially if you're dealing with special needs challenge, you want to have a career path and something that you're doing where you get to choose your future, you get to control your destiny and the hours and the money that you make. And yes, it can be a struggle, but the fulfillment that occurs when you have some success in that is unlike anything that can ever be accomplished in a job. So very long or quick answers, because we're getting to the end of our hour. And so there's so much more that we can talk about this. We're going to talk about this as the year progresses. And I'm excited that we're doing this. And it's never at the end of the hour, like, oh, I can't believe an hour's over. We're just getting rolling.
I think this one is the fastest. I know I've said that before. Yeah.
I think every week it goes faster. So I'll do my typical sign off, and you can do your sign off as well. Thank you for everybody who's listening and watching. On all of our platforms, and now on WSTX Radio in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We're so blessed to be part of that family down there. I'm so excited to be coming down and visiting, hopefully one day soon when the pandemic eases up. But in the meantime, I think about my family and the friends and the village that we have created. And I'm so honored and blessed to be a part of this conversation with you, Shawn, and with our producer partner, Sean Hall, as well. For me, this is all about empathy and love as we get older. And so please spread empathy and love wherever you can, folks. And so with that, I'm going to say goodbye to Shawn if you want to wrap us up as we end up.
Most definitely,
this
most
hour.
Definitely. Before I get into my thanks, I'm just gonna give a couple suggestions off the top of my head as people, look at as we are swimming into the new year, which is, think about what you're good at, think about what you provide at home, think about what you're passionate about as well, and allow that to be one of several things. It can be something that provides income that replaces what you might be, making or need to make, or it can be a bridge to whatever that goal or dream might be. Try not to defer the goal and dream. And we're going to have events that are going to be taking place online as it relates to the work that we do, and whether someone wants to take advantage of that, or there's something else that you're passionate about, the fight is so very worth it. And forgive me, but Brian, our next event is the 20th of January, is it not?
January.
Okay, yes, and
It
we'll be sharing more information about that. It's going to be online via Zoom. And with that said, I want to make sure that I send out a great big thank you and the deepest levels of immeasurable appreciation to the women in my life, to my amazing wife, Laura, to my mom, Jan. I want to give a thanks to my dad, who may be listening in the Virgin Islands now, to my family who is down there listening. A great thank you to Robert Moorhead for your support and your involvement in becoming a part of our family. And I appreciate you every day and every way, Brian. And to everyone that's listening, regardless of what format, know that you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on our YouTube channel. You can find us at Spotify and Apple Podcasts and several outlets as well. And just keep in mind, remember that somebody out there needs to know that you care. Somebody out there needs to know that they matter. Somebody out there wants to be heard, wants to know that they count. That's all that any of us want. I don't care how much money we're making, how little we're making, or anything else. And let's continue to look for the things that bring us together and the things that we have in common, because vulnerability is strength. Love and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for tuning in.
Woo! 2021, rock and roll.
Thank you.
Have a great time, everybody.